Hello kings, queens, and majesties, welcome to WhaleStat. I am Slice of Otaku, and the Divine Priestess of Watatsumi Island, Sangonomiya Kokomi, is finally here, and so are we, with a guide to help you make the most out of the character. Kokomi is a 5-star Hydro Catalyst user very much designed to be a healer. In this video, we will be covering her talents, skills, optimal artifacts, weapons, and constellations, all of which you can find timestamps for on the video and in the description. So beginning with her talents, we are going to do something a bit different here and start off by talking about her passive talent, Flawless Strategy, simply because of just how impactful it stands to be for the entirety of her kit. Kokomi has a 25% healing bonus, but suffers from a 100% decrease to crit rate, and with that, Kokomi cannot crit. Because of this, it's really not worth thinking about her DPS capacity much at all. But anyways, Kokomi's normal, charge, and plunging attacks are all pretty much standard for a Hydro Catalyst user. Now with that, it is worth bringing up the fact that her character ascension stat is Hydro Damage Bonus. But again, as a terrible DPS, this isn't so much a benefit as it is a band-aid of sorts. Moving on to her elemental skill, Kokomi summons a little water jellyfish that is capable of healing nearby allies based on a percentage of Kokomi's max HP. It also deals hydro damage to nearby enemies, but more than the damage, what is important about this is hydro application. Now mind you, this isn't the fastest application in the world, so you won't be able to trigger every reaction you would like to, but honestly this is where I feel most of Kokomi's value lies in the vast majority of cases. As for her elemental burst, Kokomi gains a hydro veil, dealing hydro damage to nearby enemies. From there, her normal, charge, and elemental skill damage are increased based on her max HP. This also increases Kokomi's resistance to interruption and allows her to move on the surface of water. Mind you, this also makes high falls onto water lethal. However, the true value of her burst lies in its ability to heal the entire team, as when normal and or charge attacks hit opponents, Kokomi restores HP for all nearby party members based on a percentage of her own max HP, generally covering around 1% or so. Which for me doesn't feel all too fast, but I suppose if you decide to play incredibly recklessly as I have in my testing of her, emulating a confident team with Zhongli at its back, this may actually find some use. However, if you are not fearlessly taking each and every hit to the face, it may admittedly be underutilized, especially considering its unremarkable damage, so field time would be better used for proper DPSs. Which is why I bring so much emphasis to her elemental skill as opposed to her elemental burst. When leveling her talents, I would recommend elemental skill with the utmost priority, elemental burst just behind that, and lastly her normal attacks. As for her passive talents, we have already gone over the most pressing over them, but besides that, if Kokomi's jellyfish is already on the field when she uses her elemental burst, its 12-second duration is refreshed, which of course allows it to be on the field for longer. And so if you wanted to, you could simply use her burst as a means of extending the duration of her now prioritized elemental skill. With that being said, you should certainly be mindful of your placement with this thing as it cannot be moved. Now, Song of Pearls is interestingly enough a damage-oriented one, as while in the midst of her elemental burst, the normal and charge attack bonus Kokomi gains based on her max HP is furthermore increased by 15% of her healing bonus. This is nice, but considering she does wet noodle damage regardless, it's nothing to really write home about. Lastly, Kokomi decreases the swimming stamina consumption of the party by 20%, which is not stacked with other such talents. Overall, Kokomi's passives aren't that great, but it is what it is, I suppose. Now, in regards to constellations, I, for transparency, do not have any on the character. Constellations, especially in the case of 5 stars, are to me a means of further advancing a character whose kit you thoroughly enjoy as is, and I simply do not enjoy Kokomi's kit enough to validate the investment. At Constellation 1, the last normal attack in Kokomi's combo during her burst unleashes a swimming fish, which deals 30% of her max HP as hydro damage and is not considered normal attack damage. So yeah, a bit of extra damage is placed on a character we are not looking to for damage. Not exactly the best start, but let's keep going. For Constellation 2, characters below 50% health will receive additional healing from Kokomi. Kokomi's jellyfish will provide an additional 4.5% of her max HP, and the normal and or charge attacks of her burst provide an additional 0.6% of her max HP. This serves as a major addition to healing, yes, but at the same time, I can't say that we need that much healing at our disposal at this stage of the game. But regardless, that is a healing capability spike without question. Constellation 4 makes it so that during her elemental burst, Kokomi's normal attack speed is increased by 10%, and normal attacks that hit opponents restore 0.8 energy for her once every 0.2 seconds. Now this is an interesting one. An issue for Kokomi inherently as a Hydro unit is that you are more than likely not going to have another Hydro character on the same team, which may lead to energy accumulation issues. But lastly, for C6, during Kokomi's elemental burst, she gains a 40% Hydro damage bonus for 4 seconds after her normal and charge attacks heal a character with 80% or more HP. What I, in all honesty, find to be a rather lackluster, excessive, yet highly conditional constellation. And really, I just find it so fascinating that both her C1 and C6 are entirely focused on damage. What I imagine is intended to be further compensation for her low damage, but it certainly deviates from what this character is mostly to be used for, so to me, constellations are far from desirable for her. It may also be a situation of selling us a remedy to an intended issue, but that's neither here nor there. We will now be talking about Kokomi's best weapons. At the top of the list, we have the 5-star Everlasting Moonglow. It has an HP substat, allowing it to tie in well with the rest of her kit, and especially her healing. It furthermore increases healing bonus by 10% at base, and normal attack damage is increased by 1% of her max HP, which we intend to have as high up as possible. And for 12 seconds after using her elemental burst, normal attacks that hit opponents will restore 0.6 energy once every 0.1 seconds. This serves to aid in her energy accumulation in a way similar to her C4. And so if you are ever torn between going for her Constellations and Everlasting Moonglow, go for Moonglow. With that being said, unless Kokomi is your absolute favorite for life, I cannot recommend getting this weapon. It's pretty much only good on Kokomi right now, and it is so niche that I doubt it'll be favorable for another character anytime soon. I seriously only picked it up for the sake of content. Other than that, we have the 4-star craftable prototype Amber, which also has an HP substat. Using an elemental burst, regenerates 4 energy every 2 seconds for 6 seconds, and all party members will regenerate 4% HP every 2 seconds as well. What I feel is able to come pretty close to the aforementioned 5-star. However, all things considered, with how I typically opt to play with Kokomi, the 3-star Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers is immaculate. With it, we have an HP substat yet again, and as for the skill, when switching from Kokomi, the new character taking the field has their attack increased by 24% for 10 seconds, once every 20 seconds at base. But who are we kidding? This is a 3-star, and so you should be able to achieve Refinement 5 without too much trouble, bringing that attack bonus up to 48%. And this overall serves to greatly improve Kokomi's value as an off-field support. And so yeah, any of these weapons may be used to great effect. But moving on to her optimal artifacts, my feelings towards this topic have certainly shifted from pre-launch to now. So prior, I was sure to get a hold of some of the best Heart of Depth artifacts that I could. Her entire kit deals Hydro damage, and so that 15% bonus to Hydro damage with 2 set is a pretty good fit, followed by the 4-piece benefit of after using an elemental skill, normal and charge attack damage is increased by 30% for 15 seconds, which is 5 seconds longer than her burst duration, so a pretty nice bonus as well. However, in practice, for me, Kokomi just doesn't do enough damage to validate dipping into it like this. Not to mention that extending the duration of Kokomi's jellyfish by way of her elemental burst is not considered a use of her skill, and therefore you may end up missing out on this damage bonus when you will otherwise be in the best position to use it. And don't get me wrong, Heart of Depth is still a good set on Kokomi, it's just that in hindsight, it may not be the best for how I typically opt to play her. That being said, for me, Tenacity of the Millilith is a far better fit. That is an additional 20% to HP for 2-piece, followed by the fact that when an elemental skill hits an opponent, the attack of all nearby party members is increased by 20%, along with shield strength being increased by 30% for 3 seconds, which may be triggered even when Kokomi is off field. Not exactly making use of that shield here, but that's fine. Additionally, because the jellyfish is immobile, you will want to stick close to it. And I know that is pretty much a given, but even more so now. That being said, if healing is the most important thing to you, perhaps by the time you are watching this there is actually some content that requires an excess amount, you can run around with 4-piece Maiden Beloved. At 2-piece, that is a 15% increase to healing effectiveness. Now, to express a nitpick of mine, I personally hate the wording on this, as healing effectiveness is in actuality the same as healing bonus. But I digress. At 4-piece, the use of an elemental skill or burst increases healing received by all party members by 20% for 10 seconds. As for our main stats on these artifacts, you will want an HP Sands, Hydro damage or HP Goblet, and a healing bonus circlet. We will of course want to avoid crit damage and crit rate to the best of our ability, and HP substats are paramount. Now in regards to team compositions, as a healer, you can pretty much just throw Kokomi onto any team you would like to have healing on. That being said, with Kokomi's ability to apply Hydra to enemies, certain reactionary teams may be especially fun to play around with. For Electro Charge, you can go with Kokomi, Beidou, Fischl, and Sucrose, making this a pretty free-to-play friendly team. However, if you have them, Sucrose may be exchanged for Kazuha and Raiden Shogun for Beidou. Venti is also a very solid option as well, but be sure that you can actually hit the enemies caught up in this burst, which should not be an issue if Kokomi, Fischl, and the Raiden Shogun are present. For Vaporize reactions, I put together Kokomi, Kazuha, Sucrose if you don't have him, Xiangling, and Bennett. A tried and true combination, albeit now with Kokomi thrown into the mix. And between her and Bennett, that is a whole lot of healing, so maybe you'll want to invest a bit less into that for the two of them. Alternatively, I have even dusted off Grandpa Diluc and put him together with Kokomi, Xingqiu, and Xiangling. You see, the thing about Kokomi's Hydro application is that it is simply not fast enough to vaporize each of Diluc's relatively speedy moves. And so for that, we have multiple instances of Hydro application separate from one another in hopes of vaporizing that much more. Not to mention Xiangling is also there providing Pyro Elemental Resonance, a reduction of 15% Pyro resistance at C1, 15% Pyro damage bonus during her burst at C6, and dropping 10% attack boosting chilies with her passive. Truth be told, this is honestly some of the best fun I have had with Diluc in a long while. And perhaps a similar sort of thing may be achieved with the likes of Mona rather than Kokomi, but with Kokomi staying on the field for so long, it provides a different feel for sure. In regards to a freeze team, this was probably my least favorite of the bunch, but perhaps you will enjoy it more than me because I do have other freeze teams that I enjoy a whole lot. For it, we have Kokomi, Ganyu, Kazuha or Sucrose, and Rosaria. And just so you know, Rosaria is not there for Kokomi at all. Boosting her crit rate is worthless to us, but feel free to mix and match with this one especially. You certainly do not need Ganyu for this. Chongyun, Kaya, Ayaka, you have options. But yeah guys, this has been the Kokomi guide. She is not a powerhouse and she isn't without her faults, but if you decide to play with the character, hopefully this video was of use to you. Honestly, despite everything, I do enjoy her design a whole lot, and so I'm willing to lug her around regardless. Genshin Impact isn't such a demanding game that I need the absolute strongest of units at all times, and so I don't see much of an issue. And again, I am pretty fond of the Diluc team, especially because of how much I used to use him earlier in the game, so yeah, have your fun. If you have any thoughts on any of this to share, feel free to do so in the comments down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to WhaleStat with notifications on to never miss a thing. We are really grateful for all the support you guys have shown us, and the sheer fact that we are now over the 20,000 subscriber mark is incredible. I have been your host, Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.